You're about to hear stories that sound solved, but the truth still doesn't sit right. Not because the police failed, not because there's no suspect, but because even after the case was closed, the answers feel incomplete, uncomfortable, almost wrong. These are the kind of cases that keep people awake at night, because deep down, something doesn't add up. Imagine this. A crime is committed, evidence is collected, a suspect is caught, and the case is officially solved. It should bring closure, right? Relief? But what if, instead, it leaves behind more questions than answers? What if the truth you're given feels more like a story than reality? Welcome back to the Dark Brief, where today we're diving into cases that were solved but still make no sense. And before we go deeper, if you're into real stories that mess with your mind and make you question everything, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the Dark Brief. It helps the channel grow. And trust me, the stories only get darker from here. Now let's start with something that feels impossible to explain. A man walks into a police station and confesses to a murder. Straightforward, right? Except the details he gives don't match the evidence. Not just slightly off, completely different. The time is wrong, the method is wrong, even the location feels distorted. But here's the strange part. He knew things that only the killer should know. Small details, things never released to the public. So what do? Ignore the confession, or believe someone who clearly isn't telling the full truth? Police eventually charge him. Case closed. But people still argue. Was he really the killer? Or just someone who inserted himself into a story he didn't fully understand? And that's where things start to feel off. Because in another case, something even stranger happened. A woman disappears. No signs of struggle, no clear suspects, just gone. Weeks later, she's found, and the case is solved. Authorities say they know what happened. They explain it, wrap it up neatly. But her family doesn't believe it. Why? Because the timeline doesn't make sense. Witnesses contradict each other. And the biggest question of all, how did she end up exactly where she was found, without anyone noticing? It's like the explanation fits, but only if you ignore everything that doesn't. And that's the pattern you'll start to notice. Solved, but incomplete. Take another case. A man is found dead inside his locked apartment. Doors locked from the inside, windows sealed. No sign of forced entry. The official report calls it a suicide. Case closed. But here's what doesn't make sense. Neighbors heard voices. More than one person, and not just talking, arguing, loud, aggressive. So how does someone die alone, in a locked room, after multiple people were heard inside? Police say there's no evidence of anyone else being there, but the witnesses never changed their story. So who do you believe? Because once you start questioning that, everything else begins to fall apart. And then there's the kind of case that feels almost too clean. A suspect is arrested quickly, confesses quickly. The story lines up, motive is clear, evidence is present. Everything fits like a perfect puzzle. Too perfect. People start to notice things. The confession seems rehearsed. Certain details feel planted. And the suspect, they don't act like someone hiding something. They act like someone who's already given up, almost like they're taking the fall. But for who? Authorities closed the case, officially solved. But the public? They're not convinced. Because sometimes the easiest answer isn't the right one. And that's what makes these cases so disturbing. Not the crime itself, but the feeling that the truth is still out there, unanswered, unseen, ignored. Now imagine this scenario. A person disappears in broad daylight, busy street, cameras everywhere, people walking around, yet somehow they vanish. Later, investigators piece together what happened. They identify a suspect, build a timeline, explain every step, case solved. Except, when you actually watch the footage, something feels wrong. Moments are missing, movements don't match. The suspect appears in places they shouldn't be able to reach in that time. It's like watching a movie, where scenes have been cut out. But why? Is it just coincidence? Or something more deliberate? Because when cases like this are solved, you start to realize something important. Solved doesn't always mean understood, and that brings us to one of the most unsettling types of cases. The ones where the truth exists, but it's not the full truth. A man is convicted of a crime based on strong evidence, DNA, witnesses, everything. Years later, new evidence surfaces. Not enough to overturn the case, but enough to create doubt. Small inconsistencies, overlooked details. Suddenly, the story isn't as solid as it once seemed, but the case stays closed, because reopening it would mean admitting something uncomfortable, that maybe the system got it wrong. And that's something people don't like to think about, because we want to believe once something is solved, it's over. But these cases prove it's not always that simple. Sometimes the answer you're given is just the most acceptable one, not the most accurate. And that idea, that possibility, is what keeps these stories alive. Because deep down, people feel it, that something isn't right. And once that feeling is there, it doesn't go away. It grows, it spreads, it turns into questions that don't have clear answers. Like why certain evidence was ignored, why some witnesses were dismissed, why timelines don't line up perfectly, and why, even after everything is explained, it still doesn't feel complete, because the truth, real truth, doesn't leave gaps. But these cases, they're full of them, and maybe that's the most disturbing part, not knowing that something happened, but knowing you're not being told everything. So the next time you hear that a case has been solved, take a second. Think about what that really means. Does it mean the mystery is gone, or just officially over? Because those are two very different things. And in the world of the dark brief, that difference is where the real story begins. Now I want you to think about something. What if one of these cases, the ones that don't make sense, is hiding something much bigger, something that wasn't meant to be questioned? Because history has shown, sometimes the truth isn't hidden because it's hard to find. Sometimes it's hidden because it's not supposed to be found. And that's where things get really uncomfortable. Because once you start questioning solved cases, you start questioning everything. And that's a place most people don't want to go. But if you've made it this far, you're not most people. So here's what I want you to do. Out of everything you heard today, which case felt the most off to you? Which one made you stop and think, this doesn't make sense? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read them all. And sometimes your perspective adds pieces to the puzzle that others miss. And if this video made you question things a little more than usual, share it with someone who loves mysteries that don't sit right. Because the more people look at these cases, the harder it becomes to ignore what doesn't add up. And who knows, maybe one day, one of these solved cases won't feel so solved anymore.